Good morning, HR, and happy Thanksgiving. I'm Mike Coffey, and this is the podcast where I usually talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. But this week, the tables are turned, and I'm the guest. I'm sharing my appearance on my friend Bruce Waller's podcast, Life in the Leadership Lane. I've known Bruce for more than 15 years, and if you've not met him, he's an energetic encourager and a much admired speaker on leadership and personal development. Bruce is Vice President of Corporate Relocation for Armstrong Relocation and Companies in Dallas. In addition to his podcast, he's the author of 3 books, the most recent of which is Life in the Leadership Lane, Moving Leaders to Inspire and Change the Workplace. Don't worry, this episode is still pre-approved for recertification credit. That information will be available later in the episode. This was a fun conversation with Bruce, and I hope you enjoy it in your L-tryptophan-induced post-Thanksgiving dinner stupor. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week as we start our series discussing HR New Year's resolutions as we look forward to, can you believe it, 2023. And now I give you Life in the Leadership Lane with Bruce Waller.
Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started, and what are they doing to stay there? And we are in season 3. We are talking to Mike Coffey today. I'm so excited, and you're going to really enjoy getting to know Mike Coffey. Mike is the president of Imperative Information Group. He's also certified in HR with his SPHR and his SHRM SCP. He's a board member for Texas SHRM and host of Good Morning HR. And glad to have you on the show, Mike. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, we go way back. I was actually reflecting, and I've mentioned this before, but I think it was about 15 years ago. Our company was involved in a retreat with the great Brad Smith, and we went down to Glen Rose, Texas. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, we did it 2 or 3 times, I think. Yeah,
that was so fun. I mean, we were Brad had put together these an executive group, and we were down there really building relationships. It was so much fun.
It was. Yeah, he and Jesse Owens were down there, and it was a good group.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And then of course you serve on Texas SHRM. We're going to talk more about that, but we just got through with our winter meetings. What'd you think about that in Austin, Texas?
I thought it was great. It's great to be back in person. I just feel like we're a lot more effective as a group of leaders from all over the state when we're working together in person. And Texas SHRM is all about those 32 chapters across the state having relationship, and Texas SHRM is just the vehicle through which they cooperate. And so being in person, having those leaders from all over the state was it made it worth the trip to Austin.
Well, I've always thought you were and are a brilliant business person, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. But I want to start first of all talking a little bit about your company, Imperative. Share with the listeners who is Imperative Information Group, and how do you serve your customers?
Imperative is a background investigations company. We help risk-averse employers and businesses make well-informed hiring decisions and decisions about the people they involve in their companies. So a lot of it is employment-related background checks, but also due diligence on potential vendors, venture partners, anything where somebody needs to know about the people or other organizations that they're partnering with. They turn to us for that. And so we've got 2 brands. We got Imperative, which is kind of our corporate, business focused. And then we've got PFC, PFC, Household and Caregiver Screening. And that's focused on households that are hiring nannies, domestic staff. We deal with a lot of family offices, most of the most prominent nanny agencies and domestic staffing agencies in the country. So that's kind of the softer side of Sears. That's our softer marketing and more family oriented type stuff. But that's what we do all day long, and it's just a great. It's been a great way to pay for my kids' college and orthodontia and probation fees. So.
Well, you've been doing it for a long time, and we're going to get into background checks and when it comes to onboarding and the hiring process and things like that. But I want to start with the Mike Coffey story. I think you've grown up around this area, and I know a little bit about you, but share, like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into leadership at HR? And then of course you're an entrepreneur with your own organization.
Well, I'm a Fort Worth boy. It's I'm bred in. There are other places I love to visit, but I couldn't live anywhere else but Fort Worth. And I've got deep roots here. My family's been here for over a century, and I can't see myself doing anything else. But I grew up on the west side of Fort Worth, and we'll get into it, I'm sure. But I started my first job in fifth grade, and haven't been unemployed since. And so got deep roots here in the community. But got into HR after my first business went down in flames in my early 20s. I learned a lot, and I wouldn't do it again for $1 million. But it was a good experience. But in hindsight, and I had done in my previous role in aerospace. I had done training and OD work, and the day I closed my first business, I knew I had to pay the bills, so I went down to Kelly Services, and back then we called them Kelly Girls, and I signed up as a Kelly Girl, and they sent me to immediately the next day to help a hospital get ready for the Joint Commission, which is the accreditation process for healthcare entities. And I helped them with their HR accreditation process. That turned into an actual regular gig there pretty quick. And next thing you know, I was running a corporate HR group. And here we are. I got into some HR consulting, and then 23 years ago had a consulting client that I was helping improve their nationwide financial services company. I was working with them about their employee selection process and what they were doing there. They had some pretty deep problems that were pretty apparent to their leadership, and got involved there. And one thing led to the other, and they said, well, why don't you just do our background checks for us too? And so 23 years, I went home that night and told my wife, hey, these guys want me to do their background checks, and it's nationwide company. And she was pregnant with our first son. And she looked at me and said, buddy, all I got to tell you is you better figure something out, because I'm not going back to work. And so little did she know she was going to end up being integral to the company. I don't think that was part of her plan, but so I always know how old the company is, because my oldest son is just 6 months younger than the company is. So.
That is fantastic. Oh man, there's so much. First of all, what was that job you had in fifth grade? I mean, child labor laws here. What's happening here?
I was a rancher. I worked at every day after school. I worked at a chinchilla ranch.
Chinchilla ranch.
I fed and watered chinchillas every day after school. And the chinchillas are like these big furry rats. It's the densest fur in the world, and among the most expensive furs. And it happened to be that about a mile from my house, I lived in the far west side of Fort Worth, which is really rural back then.
Okay.
It's grown up since. But old Mr. Watson, he was one of the world's leading chinchilla ranchers. I mean, he won like the national stakes and international awards and all this, was well known. And I knew he hired high school kids. And so I was in fifth grade. This is the summer before my fifth grade year. And I asked my mom for money so I could ride my bike about 2 miles to the nearest little store. That's what we called it. We were country. It was the little store. It probably had a name, but it was the little store to us. I'm going to get me a Coke at the little store. But so she said, get a job. That's just what she said, just kind of offhand, just to, blow me off. Okay. So I went and knocked on Mr. Watson's door and said, are you hiring? And he looked down at me, and, I was about half the size of any of the high school kids he had. But he gave me a shot, and I worked there fifth grade all the way through the end of my freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was about, he was paying me well below minimum wage, but it was pocket money, and it was pretty good for middle school kid. I was doing okay.
That's pretty good. I was just posting something the other day about when I was working at my parents' bowling center in 1981. So I would have been 15 So that's way before 15, fifth grade. That's fantastic. Now, you said something earlier too during that process that really, when someone says, I failed, I went up in flames, I immediately let my ears perk up. And I always want to know, like, what was that like? Failure. I mean, we all go through it, right? And you said, I learned from it, but I wouldn't want to go back and do it. Talk about, like, what was that all about?
Yeah, it was I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And I came out of it a lot smarter than I went into it. So it was 2 grueling years of trying to, make a kind of a cockamamie scheme work, and not really knowing what questions I should have asked on the front end. But all in all, it really prepared me for this role.
Yeah.
And just the reality is, had I not closed my business on that day, the day I did, and walked into Kelly Services the next day, I wouldn't have ended up at what's now Texas Health Resources, and I would have not met my wife there, and I wouldn't have my boys and my wife. So I look at my life and I've got no complaints. That was a hard time, but diamonds are formed under pressure, and I feel like I took the hand that was dealt me and did the best I could with it.
I want to stay here just for a second, because I mean, you're sitting here grateful
Totally.
for failure, and a lot of times,
and I don't even know if it's failure. I don't even like the term failure. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But nice. I learned something from it, and it put me, it's just that little trajectory change that it took me on, got me to right where I would much rather be where I am right now than still running a dry cleaning business. That's for sure. And I wouldn't have my wife and my kids and in my life, and we wouldn't be friends probably. So, I mean, I came out well ahead when it was all said and done.
I'm glad you shared that, because there's listeners right now that may be going through something like that. And I just want them to hear from someone that has had success, that's part of that process. And a lot of times we don't think about the importance, and I said gratitude, but the importance of keeping perspective. Right. We hear a lot of stories around perspective. I was just listening to Tom Brady. Of course, we all know who Tom Brady is, but he was telling this story about the Chinese farmer. And if you haven't read that, go type that in. But it's all about perspective, and it's all about, we don't know if things are, really that bad. We won't really know until later in life, right? But they shape us for our next, right? So when something's happening that may be bad, it may not be bad, right? Another door opens, right?
Yeah, and the worst it can do is kill you. I mean, if death is the worst thing we have to fear, and it's Marcus Aurelius says, if there's gods and there's an afterlife, then you've got that. And if death is just a cease of existence, then what's the problem? Then what do you have to fear from that? And I think that I grew up not knowing what I couldn't do, and just trying stuff and adjusting. And we've pivoted the company over the years, different directions, and done different things, and made some big screw ups and learned from them and moved on. But you can't. It's I think perspective is a good way to say it, or just acceptance that there are precious few things in our world that were really under our control. So few. They can be a giant lever to change the course of our lives and other people's lives, but we have so little control. So why do we spend so much time worrying about outcomes that we're putting the seasoning on the meat? That's all we can do. How it turns out is well beyond our control. And people spend so much time worrying about things that they really don't have control over. So why give it the energy and all the worry?
Let me ask you, and I always like to ask my guests this, because I think, you're in a great spot today, right? You're leading a company. You've been doing it for a long time. You love what you do. You're involved in a lot of different things. But I always like to talk about people that have helped us get to where we can call them mentors or sponsors, but have you ever had like some mentors that have helped you to get to where you are? And like, if you have, like, what was it about them that made them such a great mentor?
Yeah, I've had a lot of them. I'm convinced that success, however you want to define it, is made up of three things: luck, mindset, and skill, in that order. And I have been so lucky my entire life to have amazing people guide me, sometimes thump me on the forehead and tell me, hey, that's not how you want to do this. My grandfather, who really in many ways raised me and was my father figure, I watched him get up and go to work every day. He left the house at 5 a.m. to go to work every day. And I knew work wasn't something to be feared, and it was noble. And then Mr. Watson, the old chinchilla rancher, he would say he had all this kind of homespun wisdom, but the one thing that he said all the time, and it just rings in my ears, even 40 plus years later. Tiger, he called me Tiger. He said, Tiger, you work for a man for a day's pay, you give a man a day's work. And he said that all the time, probably when he caught me screwing around, but it stuck with me. And it struck me then and now as that's noble. I mean, that's all the work relationship really is. It's a contract, it's an agreement. I'm gonna do this work for you, and you're gonna pay me for it, and we're gonna both act honorably. So that was great. And then when I got into the proper side of the HR world, I had a VP of HR that I reported to, who took me under her wing, and her name is Diane Gallo. She's down in the Houston area now, and brilliant HR leader. And she had the unique ability that I've always tried to emulate, of seeing the untapped potential in other people. And she did that with me, and cultivated me. And still, I was in my, mid to late 20s, thought I knew everything. And there were times where she had to reel me in and set me straight. And there were times where other people said, she was nuts for letting me run projects that I got to run. And that faith that she showed me made me double down and make sure I did right by her. Our mutual friend, Brad Smith.
Oh yeah.
Nobody can tell you more about building relationships that are fruitful for everybody involved than Brad. And there's been plenty of times over the year that, in fact, I talked to him this morning. There have been plenty of times over the years where Brad's given me some great advice. So it's a never-ending list. I also got lucky. Again, luck is the first key, I think. And I married my best friend, and she's always had my back, and I've always known, hey, if this all blows up tomorrow, it doesn't really matter, because she's got my back, and we'll be okay. And it takes a village to raise the village idiot, and I've done okay so far.
What a blessing to be surrounded by great people. I love this. Listen, if you're listening right now, you need to be writing this down: luck, mindset, and skill. Love that.
That's gonna be my book. One of these days, when I get around to it, I'm gonna write that book.
I love it.
I'm convinced that's been my approach to life for a long time.
I love it. And now I know that, when I see you now, I can say, hey, Tiger.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. If a man's going to pay you for the day, you need to
give him a day's work.
Give him a day's work. I love that. And of course, Diana, seeing untapped potential. I love the way you said that. Untapped potential. I mean, seeing the good in people. And
and even when they don't, and I think it's important, even when they don't see it, that's I was a cocky kid who thought I knew everything, but she was able to pull stuff out of me that I thought wasn't who I was. I'm not going to, I would have never have dreamed to take on this kind of project or do that. And she could do that. And I've tried to do that with my team and my employees, even my own sons over the years. I think that's a real skill, and sometimes it burns you, right? Sometimes you invest in somebody, you think they're going to do this, and they let you down, but really they're not letting me down. They're letting themselves down. Or sometimes it's just, I was wrong. This wasn't a good fit for them. And and I have to own that too. But I think I'd say more often than not, I've got the thrill of watching somebody succeed where they didn't think they would have, or wouldn't even gone down that road. One of my best analysts, one of my best background check analysts, and our clients love her. She came to us with no college. She had delivered pizzas for Papa John's for the 4 previous years out of high school. And she came in at an entry level admin clerical role and has been with us for quite a while, and is my best analyst. She's the one that clients want to talk to. And it's just, it's great. And her life is different because, there was something in that process of hiring her that we said, hey, this is somebody we can invest in. And it's been great for her, and it's been super for us. I mean, it's not pure benevolence on my part. It's, we benefit from having her on our team.
Well, I want to, speaking of the team, I want to dive into this. I want to learn a little bit more, and I want our listeners to learn a little bit more about what you do for companies. And so when you say she's your best analyst, like what makes her a best, or someone that you would say, hey, they are my best, whatever position they are. Like, right. What is it about them?
And we have hiring those roles, people who are assembling the data around background checks. This is an industry that's heavily commoditized. It's about fast and cheap largely, and databases and all of that. And there are a lot of errors and data issues with that stuff, that kind of report. So we're focused on a tiny part of the market that really wants to make the investment to do it right. Oh, it's like you. It's not that different than Armstrong, right? I mean, you can go down the road and hire 2 guys in a truck and have your move done, or you can have it done by people that you really trust, and it's going to get there, and you're have a much higher level of success. That's what we do. But I know that having people who can sit and focus and think about things from the client's point of view. Our goal is that our clients never have to pick up the phone and say, I don't understand what this means. They call me and say, hey, what is this? This isn't clear on the report. That's going to be a topic at our next team meeting about, okay, so how do we say this differently, or how we approach this differently when it comes up next time? But finding people who care, who get why what we do, how helping employers make well-informed hiring decisions, why that's important. And so we're constantly telling those stories. We sing our praises when we have somebody who was about to put an employer at risk, and we've maybe lied to the employer about their history or their background, and we've identified who they really are. But then we also celebrate the other side too, though. I spend a lot of time training employers around how to use criminal history information fairly, and how to give people second chances, and how to do that in a way that doesn't put your company at excess risk and all that. And we love that too. And we talk about those things because, we deal with risk-averse employers. Those are the people that are willing to invest in making those well-informed hiring decisions. But at the same time, just because they're risk-averse doesn't mean that they want to be unfair, but they don't know how to evaluate this information. And so we've put together tools around all that. And I'm just as passionate about helping those folks who've made critical errors in judgment in the past get that next job opportunity, because the employers have good processes that we've helped them build, as I am protecting my clients from those knuckleheads who maybe haven't learned their lessons and haven't been upfront and honest about their history with employers.
Well, let me ask you about that. And by the way, I love how you said, look at it from the customer's point of view. I think that is so key for building that relationship and doing things different. Let me ask you this. When companies are typically looking for, like, background check, that's typically what companies are looking for when they're talking to you, for the most part, your general, your core. Is that something that, like, what are a lot of them doing now? Do they do that in-house? Do they just go over the internet, or what do you see out there?
Most of them are doing something over the internet, or they're using one of the big screening. There's been so much so many acquisitions and consolidation in our industry.
Okay.
There are a handful of giants out there, and they've got all, really almost all the big giant corporate contracts because it's going through procurement, it's going to the low bidder. And so we've identified a half dozen ways that the big guys cut corners that put employers at risk. And we just make sure we don't do those, right? And so our clients, we never want to have to, our goal is to never have to tell a client, hey, we're sorry. And as soon as we screw up, and we do on occasion, we always say it, and I will pick up the phone and be the one that says it. But our goal is never to have to do that. And 90% isn't good enough for our clients. And so we spend a lot of time getting it right. But a lot of employers out there, they just want a piece of paper in the file to say, yeah, we did our background check. And they're not a good fit for us. And, we'll certainly sell them a great background check if they'll pay the fee for it. But most of them want to spend $30, $40, $50. And you're just not going to do the kind of due diligence you really need to do for that. And most of our clients came to us after something went wrong. Their employment law attorneys were, almost all our business comes from referrals from current clients or employment law attorneys or HR consultants.
Okay.
And most of our clients came to us after something went wrong, and somebody said, why did we hire this person in the first place? And then they get referred to us, and we try to help them, prevent that mistake again. But, there's all kinds of, there's databases out there. People just go, like the Texas Department of Public Safety has a criminal records database for the state of Texas. And a lot of employers and school districts rely on it. But you get in there and it's missing a third of the people on death row. That's how bad DPS's data is. And so people, if it doesn't have the death row guy, it doesn't have the sexual assault guy or the other folks in there that aren't on death row. And now the good news is the death row folks aren't looking for work. But all the other folks we know from we run hundreds of those reports every week from DPS, and we're searching all the counties where people have lived, worked, attended school. Usually somebody physically walking into that courthouse to check those criminal records, and we know a third of the records we find in the county don't show up in DPS's data. So there's a lot of ways to cut corners, and we just don't do it.
Let me ask you this: what's a like a little red flag? I always think about the restaurant. It was at Poncho's that had that little red flag that would roll
Raise
up.
the flag.
What's that little red flag? If somebody's right now listening to the show and they're they're serving in an HR role and maybe they're in charge of this particular piece of the hiring process. What's something that would like flag saying, hey, you know what, we probably need to reach out to someone and not necessarily, just go over the internet. Are there any things that that trigger that you see out there? Like, you know what, we get a lot of calls because of this.
Yeah. The two big ones are, first of all, I hear from prospective employers, we're kind of concerned because our background checks keep coming back clear. No records found on these guys, but the guys admitted to us up front that they had this history. And then we call the background screening company and they give us some excuse why this record that the guy admitted to didn't show up on the background check. And that's a red flag. And the other one's the other direction. The background check company reports a record on somebody that really doesn't belong to them. And that happens too often. And that's just because they're relying on databases and sloppy information. And those are the two most obvious red flags. But the depth of the research is a big deal. Some states severely limit what employers can consider as far as criminal history. Like in California, an employer can only consider a conviction in the last 7 years, period. And so deferred adjudication, they pled guilty and served probation. An employer in California can't consider that. And a lot of screening companies limit nationwide what they will tell employers to California's rules. And we're the exact opposite of that extreme. And the people in our industry often think we're nuts because we're putting all this extra labor in. But we report everything we can legally report to the employer and that they can legally use. So in Texas, you can pretty much consider everything. And so everything we can legally report in Texas is a lot more than we can to our clients in California. So but it's a ton of work, right, to figure out what's going on. And even at the city by city, San Francisco has its own rules. New York City has its own rules. Madison freaking Wisconsin has its own rules. And so we're having to manage, okay, this employee lives in New York City and they live in the job that they're applying for is in Madison, Wisconsin. So what's the most, restrictive of the rules there? We're doing all of that kind of stuff to make sure we get as much as we can to our clients without giving them the rope to hang themselves with.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, that's fascinating. I think people listening have learned a lot from this.
And let's take a quick break. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR / Life in the Leadership Lane has been pre-approved for 3/4 of an hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 71 and enter the keyword leader. That's LEADER. And now back to my conversation with Bruce Waller.
Hey, one thing that I have always admired about you, Mike, I've always thought you're a brilliant business person, but also you get out and you speak a lot. And that's one thing I admire about you is you get out there and
you do your share of it too, buddy.
Well, we both do, but you're help educating. Talk a little bit, just share, what are a couple of topics that you like to speak about that you've gotten great feedback on? And I know there's probably a lot of people listening right now that have heard you speak. Very funny, but very informative and very educational. Just share maybe a couple of topics and why you enjoy talking about them.
The other adjective that you didn't say was inappropriate, and I think I get that a lot too. But second chance hiring, I've got several presentations around that, and I think that's really important. And I love to present to HR groups around that because I find most employers, most business owners want to do the right thing by folks and they recognize we can't have a society full of people who are unemployable, and most of them want to do that, but they don't know they don't have the tools. And so we developed the tools over the last 23 years. I give them away. They're on our website, and we've got recorded webinars. Second chance hiring is a big one. And the other side is, like you said, I own this business, and I love the idea of strategy, values, accountability. And in fact, I'm presenting this Friday down in San Antonio, around using your organizational values as an accountability and planning tool. And so those kind of things, I've got presentations around strategy, values, accountability. I think that stuff's those are the areas that HR can make a real difference in an organization. So I just, I enjoy those things. And so that's a big topic.
I love how you shared, yes, I talk about, I want to help people in the area of background, but I want to just help people. And when you start speaking about values, I think you just set yourself apart from a lot of people, because you're saying, you know what, I just want to help people. Right. And, of course, in your organization, values are pretty important, right?
Right. Yeah. Anybody on my team, if you call my office, they better be able to rattle off all three of our values. And so it's always act with integrity, always act in the best interest of the customer, and always act as one with compassion and respect. And those are, and we talk about those all the time. And those are real key to who we are. And that's how we hire. We hire more about, because all employers always often make the mistake at least, of hiring for skills. But then we have to manage and fire people for behavior. And I think it's a lot easier to give people skills. That's why my thing, luck, mindset, and skill's the third one, because I can give you the skills. If you've got the basic aptitude and competencies, I can give you the skills. What I can't do is change your behavior. And so values are all about finding the behavior that we value as an organization and that we're going to incentivize and reward. And I think a lot of employers still haven't quite got there as far as really using their values as hiring criteria.
I love how you shared that. And we can't ever underestimate the power of talking about values. And I want to touch on this because a funny story, as I think back, and I shared this in my very first book, Find Your Lane. And I talk about when I was a young manager, and we were in this training class, and the trainer was talking about values, right? And so we got, everybody got a sheet of paper. It was like 50 values on the paper, and you're supposed to like circle your top 20 and then get it down to 10 and get to your top 5. Right. And then he said, okay, everybody. And of course, everybody in the company was there. The CEO, all the C-suite were there on the front row. I mean, everybody was there. And he said, okay, everybody that had integrity as your number 1, raise your hand. And at the time, honestly, I didn't know what integrity even meant. I mean, I was like, that's not my number 1. I don't even know what it is. All leaders on the front row raised their hand. And I thought to myself, that isn't pretty important. I better go find out more about that. And today, that's one of my core values, right? And so when you talk about that, you can't assume that people know what values are and the importance of leading with values, right?
Right. That's right. And your organization has values, right? Whether they're written down or not, you've got values. There's behavior that you're rewarding. It may be the wrong behavior. It may not be the behavior that'll set the organization up for success in the long term. And it's just short-term stuff. It's that salesperson that causes chaos and steps on people, but they bring in the revenue. They close the deals, but they're killing everybody else around them. And once they've handed off the account to operations, somebody's got to go clean up their messes. But hey, bottom line, they're bringing in the revenue. That's short-term thinking, and it's not the behavior that's going to, eagles don't fly with turkeys, and it's not the kind of behavior that's going to bring the kind of people you want in your organization to, or at least get them to stick around. And so, we all have values, and a lot of people have never stopped to think through what theirs are. And I keep mine on my. I use Asana as my project manager, and at the top of my task list are my personal values, just to remind me that that this is who I want to be. And there are days where my values are more aspirational than reality. There are days where I'm just not feeling it, and I've really got to work to be true to those. And there's other days where, man, I'm in the groove and I'm living my best life, but I have to keep reminding myself of what they are, and I keep that in front of me.
Man, I got chills. That is so good. Let me ask you this: what drives you? I mean, you're a pretty busy guy. You speak. You're doing a lot of stuff. Like, what drives you every day?
It's I just love what I do. I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've been able to build the life that gives me the freedom to do what I want to do. And that really boils down to helping people, getting to, there's some vanity here. One of my values is earned admiration. I mean, and I put it right there. I admit I value that. That's something I personally value. I like people saying, "Hey, thank you for that," or "Hey, good job," or "Hey, we really trust Mike Coffey." That means a ton to me. And so I keep that right, so it's helping people, and, maybe 60% of the time you get a thank you. That 60% is gold to me. I'll take it every time. And then my wife and kids, I'm down to one at home, and I'm going to love him so much more after he graduates in May. He graduates high school in May and goes off to college. His love factor is going to go up by 20% because he won't be under my roof anymore. But I love all my boys from a distance. And, but they are what I've spent the last 23 years, preparing for them to be on their own and out of my hair and living their best lives.
Write it down, folks. Earned admiration. I just love that. I was actually thinking when you said you built a life that you love, I'm right there with you. And I posted something on LinkedIn not too long ago, and I got a lot of feedback from it. And I said, back before I took a job at Armstrong, at 37, I was managing my days, and I learned to start leading my life. And doing that in a way. And a lot of that is through values, what you talked about, right? Knowing values, and not just knowing our values, but looking at other people and seeing and finding out what their values are, and what's important to them, and just trying to build that life of who you want to be. Like, take a little bit of from everyone and just make it your own, right? Let me ask you this. I always like to ask a question, like, when you started out in fifth grade. I mean, come on. And you've worked all the way up to where you are now. When was that moment you found your lane? You found that calling that you said, just like what you just said just now, I love what I do.
The pivot point, I think, was the day I decided I had to close that first business. It was just when I said, okay, I'm going to look at the facts. I'm going to look at reality here, and I'm going to make this decision. And I'm going to set aside, I could have dragged it out another 6 months or a year, and maybe with different results, but probably not. But I had to just say, I'm going to set aside ego here. I'm going to do what, I owed money, I owed people money, and people that had backed my venture, and I was going to have to, say, I'm not going to ask for more money. That's what would be necessary, and we're not going to do it. And I just made that decision. And once I made it, it was so liberating, because I was like, okay, I am, the few things that I have control over, I'm controlling, and everything else is outside of my control. So I'm going to step out here and say, here's what we're going to do because of the circumstances. This is what I can do. And from that day forward, I've always had the confidence that whatever brings me, if it doesn't kill me, I'm fine.
I love that.
So that's really when it was. And so, I didn't have to be in the background check business. I could have stayed in HR, and I would have been just as happy. I don't have any concerns about that. It would have been a different path, but as long as I ended up with my wife and kids, everything else is going to be fine.
That's fantastic. Hey, I want to get in this real quick. You serve also. I mean, if you're not busy enough, you serve not just Texas SHRM. You serve a lot of different organizations, but I want to talk about Texas SHRM in particular. What do you like? You've been serving Texas SHRM for a long time. I mean, obviously from a Fort Worth chapter standpoint, as well as the state. Today, you're the assistant state director, district director. Talk a little bit about what you do for Texas SHRM, and how has it helped you as a business person, or just how does it help you in general?
Well, right now, my role is, like I said, assistant state director over the district directors. And so the district directors are HR leaders from the chapters across the state who are tasked to help coordinate and support the local chapters. So if if El Paso has a question, we can coordinate an answer from Austin or Waco, Heart of Texas, or any of the other chapters, and they can share each other. And my heart's always been with those small to medium-sized chapters who don't have paid staff and don't have big bank budgets, and are just, run often by a handful of volunteers who are just really dedicated. And I just, working with those folks is just a joy for me. So helping them solve their problems. I've helped a number of chapters do their strategic planning and stuff like that over the years, and help them put plans and execute, and then take back, maybe learn a lesson or two from me in that process and take it back to their companies. That's for me, that's what I get out of it is those relationships. Plus, it gives me an audience, and I get to go talk, and people sit there and listen, and they don't often throw vegetables. And so it's good.
I love that. I love it. And you do a great job. As a matter of fact, I saw a post where you went out, and I think Kathy Hardcastle went out to
North Texas. We did North Texas.
North Texas SHRM, and part of that. And so, and that was on a Saturday, right? Yeah. And this is not a paid gig. I mean, you're going out there, you're trying to help them and support them. And so I love what you do, and I appreciate everything you do for Texas SHRM. Hey, I want to ask you this. And as if you even have a little bit more time, you started Good Morning HR podcast. Yeah. Talk about what is that all about, and why did you start the podcast, and how's it going?
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, and this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. So that's basically what it's about. It's a 30-minute podcast. We drop every week, and I just talk to business leaders, trusted advisors about the business of bringing people together to create value. And so it's been great. I'm dropping episode 32 this week. So we started last fall. It's been on my to-do list for years. I wanted to do it. In fact, I was sitting in a conference in DC in I think 2011 or 2011, and sitting to a conference session and kind of bored by the speaker and just writing down marketing ideas. And I got the idea for Good Morning HR. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but goodmorninghr.com. And right there on my early Apple iPhone, I got on Dotster and I bought that domain. And then it sat there from 2011 till 2021, and I didn't use it. And then we were set, and I wanted, and I'll be honest, I love doing the podcast, but it's about relationships. All my business is relationships. So there's only so many people I'm going to meet at going to the SHRM conferences and speaking at all the SHRM meetings and stuff, which I love doing. And this is a way to meet more influencers and more people who maybe they trust me. Our whole marketing plan is the fewer people who think my coffee is an a-hole, the better off we are. And so that's kind of how we, and so me just being a nice guy. And so this was a way to do that. And so I always knew that, this podcast would be a great way to do that and be interesting, hopefully, and educational. And so I had an amazing marketing person come to work for me last January, fresh out of school, super sharp. And I mentioned that, hey, this is one of the things that's been on the back burner for a long time. I think we should, I've thought about doing it. She jumped on that like a pit bull and just executed, because I'm great at the vision stuff, man. I love the big picture, but ask me to put tab A in slot A, it'll never happen. That's just not my strength. Okay. And and she executed on that and was amazing and put it all together. We got a great producer and it's been so much fun. So, and it's one of the few podcasts that gives you HRCI and SHRM research credit.
Okay.
And so you get half a research credit, and some of them are even business, what we used to call strategic HRCI credit. And so every week there's so you can get, just from listening to me, ask dumb questions of smart people, you can get 26 credits a year just from that. It's like sitting in HR Southwest while you drive to work every day.
I love it. And I will put a link in the show notes for all the listeners that want to check out Good Morning HR. They can click on the link and subscribe to that. I always like to say, when you said that, it reminds me, I always talk about ideas are easy. Execution is hard.
Oh yeah.
Right. It is just hard.
And I've done well surrounding myself by people with people whose skills are different than mine. And so, and they're amazing.
That's it. Yeah, no, that's one of the keys and one of the common threads I find for all of my guests on Life in the Leadership Lane. I mean, they're just surrounded by incredible people. Hey, let me ask you this before we pivot over to It's Time to Accelerate. I always like to ask if you've ever been given any advice. You shared the advice from, of course, Mr. Watson. I just love that. But any other advice that you have been given, like you just find yourself sharing with your team or with people just in your path? I'm curious. I always like to ask that question.
The thing that comes back is what Brad Smith told me years ago, and I've heard different versions of it. You've heard it before in different settings, but people will never remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. And for me, that translated to being sincere in my relationships with people, and at times just saying the thing that I really want to say to this person isn't going to help them, and is not going to really make me feel better. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, and there's no reason to make this person feel bad. And there's and there are people, it's, even to me, people are unpleasant sometimes. And it's, I don't understand why, but I've learned that if I can leave people just feeling a little better off about the situation, and sometimes it just means me not saying what I want to say. And other times it's just being affirming to them and or helping them, trying to help them set a right perspective, but whatever it is. But that thing from Brad, it was the first time I'd ever heard it, and it was probably easily 15 years ago. And it was, but what you say is a lot less important than how people feel when it's done. And they, so I always want people to know that I'm acting in good faith and that and respect, even if it's a hard message I'm delivering.
Isn't that amazing how you can create incredible impact by maybe something you shared or just being part of a conversation? In my new book, Life in the Leadership Lane, my last chapter, I talk about 5-star experiences. And each time I have a guest on the show, they share something that just, it's so impactful. And I try to capture it because I know that will help me grow. And then I always get this great feeling of knowing that, wow, anybody who's listening to the show is going to feel the very same thing. So when you talk about how it made them feel, I'm right there with you. And that's man, what a blessing. That is so cool. I told you the time is going to fly by. Yeah. So we're going to shift over. It's time to accelerate. I'm going to ask you just a few questions. First question I always like to ask is, would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast? I know you probably do both.
I'm a big listener though, even audiobooks. I've been a Audible subscriber since 1999.
What?
Back before they had smartphones and you had to buy an actual Audible book player, and it took like hours to download a book. And so I'm on a plan that I get 2 books a month for a ridiculously small amount of money, and I listen to usually 3 or 4 a month, and then I've got a list of podcasts that I listen to, and so yeah, my favorite economist is a guy named Tyler Cowen. Okay. And I just got the proof of his book because he's going to be on the podcast when it's released in May, and I'm actually have to read the paper version of the book, and it's going to kill me because I'm not a sit still person. I have a hard time sitting still and watching TV, and so I listen to audiobooks and podcasts all day long when I'm washing. I volunteer to wash the dishes here at the house. So that's my job. And fold laundry, because I'll fold laundry and do dishes because nobody wants to talk to you when they stay away from you when you're folding laundry and doing dishes because they don't want to help. And so I get to listen to the audio. And so, yeah, I'm a big audio person.
I love that, man. That was so good. That was so good, man. You are a very, very energizing person. I want to ask you, outside of all the stuff we've talked about, serving in the community, running your company, what energizes you outside of the workplace?
I get up every morning at 5.
Okay.
And usually even on the weekends.
Okay.
And I hit, my wife and I work out at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. I practice yoga 4 or 5 times a week. And I do a high intensity interval training workout at least 3 times a week, sometimes 4. I love that. That's for me, that community, that's my second or third or fourth community are all the folks that I work out with. I've got a close cohort of really close friends, and we have breakfast a couple of days a week. And I wouldn't trade that 1 hour that we have breakfast together for anything in the world. I block those off. Nobody is scheduling breakfast over those times. Spending a lot of time with my wife and kids, and I'm really anxious to be an empty nester, more so than my wife. I love my kids, but it's going to be wheels up for Christy and I. 9.5 years ago, we put a 10-year plan in place that we could do whatever we had to do for the company from anywhere in the world because we love to travel, and we're going to be able to go plant roots. My middle son lives in Oslo, Norway, and dances with the Norwegian National Ballet, and so we plan on spending a lot of time in Europe with him. We love San Miguel de Allende. We like to just plant and then experience the local community, not just hit the tourist sites. And so, so we got that coming. It's I'm jazzed about all of that. And I have I've got my family, my 93-year-old grandmother. I spend one afternoon every weekend sitting with her and doing honeydews for her and my mom and my sisters. I mean, we've got I enjoy it all. That's the thing, Bruce, is like I said, I've got a life by design. And there's so little in my life when I look at my calendar and I think, I have to go do that today. And I just, this could be my last day on the planet. And I remind myself of that all the time, that there's no promise for tomorrow. What happened yesterday is today. All I've got is this instant right now and what I'm going to do with it. And I don't want to waste it.
I've shared before with listeners on the podcast. It is not a myth. This is truth. When you find the work you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's what you're doing. And I love everything you're sharing. It's very inspirational. And I know people that are listening are taking tremendous notes right now. Hey, I have one last question for you. It's one of my favorite questions I like to ask. And Mike, 10 years older, is knocking at your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What's he going to tell you?
Well, first of all, he's going to say you were right. It's a lot less expensive not to have all these kids on your payroll. I think that's going to be part of it. And you're seeing a theme here, right? I'm a little anxious about this. But I think he'll say you married the right woman. And the last 10 years of just the two of you being together and without the distractions and the different life that you have when you have kids in the house and when you don't. I think he's going to say, I think he would say, yeah, you did. You picked well, and she's really patient, and you're lucky. So
I love that.
That's what he's saying. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Well, you're definitely living life in the leadership lane. You've earned my admiration long before this podcast, but even more now. So I appreciate you coming on and just sharing perspective.
Thank you.
Hey, if someone wants to get connected with you, they heard something you saying about, maybe it's the background checks or the values we talked about or something you shared. How is the best way that they could connect with you?
Oh, I'm everywhere, but imperativeinfo.com is the company, which is the worst domain ever, but I created it, 23 years ago. I'm stuck with it. Or goodmorninghr.com is the podcast. But Mike Coffey, SPHR on Facebook. I'm everywhere. I'm not hard to find.
I'll put the link.
And I will always welcome anybody to reach out, even people who aren't my clients. If you've got an HR question or a background check question or a, what would you do in this situation question, I love those. I often will spend more time on those than the things that actually get me paid because I really enjoy it. So don't hesitate to reach out if I can ever help.
I'll put those links in the show notes because I'm pretty sure someone's going to reach out to you and have a question, especially if it's a free resource.
Yeah.
But someone that has been around a long time, somebody that's experienced and somebody that has that serving heart. And so appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks
for having me, man.
I've enjoyed knowing you for many years. We served together at Texas SHRM, but just to have you on the show and to be able to share this conversation, it's a real treat. So appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, Bruce. And thank you for all you do. We appreciate you at Texas SHRM too.
Yep. All right, man. Can't wait to share. I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.